Then with the weather, most people are predicting that it'll be a smaller turnout than has been maybe in 2016, for example. And if that's true, our folks are motivated to come out. I mean, they're going to come out, you know, whether it's -20, whether it's -10.
Joining us now is Jason Johnson, professor of politics and journalism at Morgan State University, host of the podcast A Word on Slate.com. So, Jason, we've heard a lot of predictions from candidates about what the impact will be of a variety of things, Mother Nature, the excitement of their supporters. What are you watching tonight in terms of things that could have an impact? And what is a pretty small electorate?
The first thing I'm looking for is whose donors are going to call and say jump out first, right?
Oh.
Because there's been this narrative, Jen, of people saying, well, there's 1 or 2 tickets out of Iowa. Look, I understand the logic behind that, but there's only 1 ticket out of Iowa, right? No one's getting flued out of Iowa. No one is getting a consolation prize. Either you beat Donald Trump or you're the first loser. There are no moral victories against an amoral candidate, right? So everybody who's running right now isn't even in the race to beat Donald Trump. That's not going to happen. They're in a race to keep their donors happy. Because if you get blown out by 20, 30, some ridiculous amount of points, you're going to have your big spender say, hey, Ron, why are we doing this? Hey, Vivek, why don't you just start that podcast? Hey, Nikki, maybe it's not going to happen. So that's what I'm looking at. For the people who spent $30 million, more than $1 million on this race, I got to see how they're going to be able to keep their funders behind them after they lose to Donald Trump.
When you look at what I mentioned earlier, which is the overemphasis of polling and predictions, stacked against what you're talking about, which is there is a Republican elite financial support for something other than Trump. And there's anywhere from, as I mentioned, 35 to 50+% looking at alternatives depending on the cycle. How much does that affect then the spread? In other words, you think that the Trump people are going around saying if they get above 13, that's the biggest margin ever. Of course, there's never been a former president running. But what do you think the real spread is for those people, the political people?
I think for the political people, they're looking for a spread that's under 20. Right? Like, because there have been some polls that show, you know, Trump at 70-something, 57%. If Trump gets 40 and Nikki Haley gets 23, I think she can keep people surrounding her saying, you know what, we can push this through. Maybe we can push this through all the way to South Carolina. But for Ron DeSantis, I mean, he's not in that position, right? If he ends up being a distant third or even 4 or 5 points behind Nikki Haley, it's going to be a problem. And Ari, we talk about this all the time. We're beyond the prediction game, right? This isn't like guessing, predicting, throwing numbers down. These are the raw numbers that have stayed solid for a long time. And here's the other part that's key. The Haley campaign and her super PACs have spent about $30 million. DeSantis has spent almost $30 million. You know, Tim Scott, who dropped out almost 2 months ago, he spent $14 million. What you're looking at is a situation where Donald Trump may have spent less than Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, and he's still going to beat them by 15 points. No one's going to see a return on investment if that's what ends up happening. So people are looking for a spread of less than 13, very likely, to stay funding these campaigns. And that's what I think the Haley campaign should really be focusing on right now. And Ron DeSantis, this might be his final night.
I mean, let's talk about Ron DeSantis for a moment. You just raised him. Does he have to get, if he's in third, if he's close to Haley, can he make a pitch to his supporters that he's going to stay in? What does he need to do to feel viable, at least to the people who are going to fund his flights to New Hampshire and other states?
Jen, I hate to overuse this lyric, but there's 99 counties and he may not win one, right? Like Ron DeSantis at least
he wrote it down. He wrote it down over here.
Now that's Sean Carter. Okay, got it.
Yeah, he's going to reuse that later tonight. We're going to bet on it.
He has to at least get like Marco Rubio numbers, right? There's got to be a few yellow counties here and there that Ron DeSantis can go back to his donors and say, hey, there's a reason to stick with me. If he can't show that, if he can't show that he's pulled some actual counties in after starting up here and dropping down here, there's just no enthusiasm for it anymore, and there's no money.
Yeah.
And at this point, money might be more important than enthusiasm.
Yeah. Jason, I don't know if you've ever heard this expression. Sometimes you'll see it on signs. Slippery,
here it comes. Here it
slippery
comes.
when wet. I've never understood that. Wet means slippery. Like if you have a fish in water,
you're slippery. Yeah.
Yeah, wet. It's a synonym. So I never understood that. Well, what about slippery when icy? Because it is another part that's hanging over all this. We love to talk about our numbers and all our history because that's the type of people we maybe are.
Nerdy.
But the weather matters. Take a look at what candidates are saying. if we have it.
We could summarize it.
No?
I'm asking you to brave the elements.
And just don't go by the polls. The polls show that we're leading by so much. But we have to get out there. Every one of us have to get out there.
It's going to be negative 15, but I'm going to be out there. And I want you to go out there.
Could weather matter more than the spending and the ads you just referenced?
It could, Ari, especially when you're talking about some of these smaller rural counties. Now, again, this is a matter of where you are. There may be some places where it's like, hey, they've cleaned the roads, some places where they haven't cleaned the roads. It is only one vote. But again, I've said this before, when you're talking about tremendously cold weather, if I don't think my candidate has a chance, right, then why am I going to brave the weather, right? I don't think Ron DeSantis is going to win, even though he's my guy. I don't think Nikki's going to win, even though she's my candidate. The only way this could potentially flip the other way is if Trump supporters say he's got it in the bag and they don't show up, and then we get an upset.
Yeah, and that's why it is unpredictable. Jason Johnson on More Than One Topic with more than one reference. We thank you.